Hey gang, this is Nick Z. Welcome to Rock Talk episode 13. My special guest today is a fellow drummer and hails from Ambridge, PA, a 2022 inductee into the Beaver Valley Musicians Hall of Fame. He started his drumming career professionally at 12 years old. With a passion for horn-based bands, he currently can be heard behind the kit with the Hot Metal Horns. Paying tribute to the rich history of Beaver County bass artists, he created the Performing Arts Legends Museum, PALM for short. Let's hear more about his career. Please welcome Elbie Yaworsky. Hey Elbie, welcome to the show. I appreciate you hanging out with me for a little bit. How you been?
I've been really good. Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate the opportunity here.
Well, I thank you. We got to know one another during the COVID kind of thing where we're all online, and you of course have you're on the internet and Facebook and so forth, and of course we know that you're one of the founders of the Palm Museum, Performing Arts Legends, and it's originally based out of Ambridge, and through that you were able to compile one of the if not the largest collection of music history memorabilia, instruments and so forth in the county and anywhere that I've seen, and I do stuff like that out here, go to see stuff like that out here. So right. I just upon seeing that, I said I want to learn more about you, and what got you to where you are now. And so you grew up in Ambridge. Are you from it?
Yeah, actually from Ambridge, and so I'll have a vernacular out of which I'll say I'm from the projects.
Ah, okay.
So anyone from the Valley knows, I was from the low income side.
Right, projects.
Of life. And so projects defined us, and you defined where you were at based on what row you were in and whether you were up or lower, and so it's really interesting. So
absolutely. You graduated, I'm guessing, what you said, somewhere like in 70, 71 was your...
Yeah, 71 graduated,
Ambridge High. And your parents, growing up, what were your parents listening to? What was one of the surrounding things for you as a kid?
Well, this is going to surprise you, believe it or not. Both of my parents are deaf. But my dad loved the passion and presence of drum and bugle corps.
Wow, okay.
He, as a kid, he would take me to Midland, and we would go to the drum and bugle competitions when I was a kid. And here's this deaf guy in the stands, just enthralled with the majesty of drum and bugle without hearing a note.
Yeah.
And, and I remember being in the stands. And so, I would think that influence over me as a kid inspired me because of just the amazing percussion work of that. And right. I remember the Phantom Regiment was the one drum and bugle corps that stood out. And when they came out, when they were done, you were almost in tears. I mean, it was so emotional.
Yeah.
And so that's me. So I can see myself at that end of Midland, sitting in the Midland football stands and watching drum and bugle corps as a kid. Yeah. And so I'm in second or third grade, and so I'm inspired to want to play drums. And that's pretty sure that, as well as just a lot of things on TV and a lot of bands, but that was the pinnacle of my inspiration, was that.
So upon hearing just the rhythms with the power of the horns, the power of the drums, hearing that crack of that snare, and those guys, it's all just regimented, and I could see where you fell in love with that, and that your father brought you down there to enjoy the father-son thing, and you learn the power of percussion and horns.
Oh, yeah. And so that's what's so funny is I think about myself today. I'm still a horn band guy. I find so if I don't have at least a 9-piece band, I think something's missing.
Right.
So if we're not playing Chicago or Blood, Sweat and Tears or Chase, any of that stuff, I'm just, if they're not physically present, I will still hear the horns in my head.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I tell people that. So as I play drums, I guess the one gift I have been given is that I hear the whole orchestra, even when it's only a 3-piece entity.
Wow.
And when you hear all that other stuff, you play your drums differently if you're only hearing the 3 pieces.
Right. Yeah.
And so I try to describe that to people is that that's my approach to that. But I would have to give credit to one guy. His name was John Gurney. He was my elementary music teacher in Ambridge, and a humble guy. And he made sure I learned how to play brushes.
Yeah.
And just he's a fanatic about brushes and rudiments.
Right.
His instrument was trumpet, right? And it wasn't until I had graduated high school and really researched his background did I realize that Mr. Gurney actually played with Glenn Miller.
Really?
In World War II, over in the theater for the USO shows. And so here's this guy, an elementary music teacher who played with Glenn Miller.
Wow.
And how he taught me and the respect for brushwork and just the attack of cymbals and all that other stuff really helped me through. I think back, his influence was pretty significant. And he would not let me have a snare drum until I did the rudiments on the pad.
Yeah.
He wouldn't support my dad getting me anything until I was ready with that.
So he had, you're right.
And so I remember another good friend of mine, same thing. His family bought him a drum set. The artist, Art, and I can't remember his last name. I think he worked at Volkmein's in town, a great drum instructor, made them put his drums back away. And he was not allowed to bring out the drum set until Art said he was ready.
Until he was ready.
Until he was ready. And I remember that. I remember it was a Rogers drum set, similar to the Rogers kits that we had. And so I'm influenced by Rogers as a brand because that's what I grew up on.
Sure.
And so, you think through all of that. And so that's where I'm at. And I learned to read exceptionally well. And I only had 4 private lessons from another cat in the Valley, Eddie Colonna. Mm-hmm. He owned a drum store, and that's where I bought my first drum set after Mr. Gurney said, okay, you're allowed to buy him a drum set now.
Yeah.
And I went and picked it up, and Eddie gave me 4 lessons, and then that was it. I think back through all of my education really came from John Gurney. And here's this trumpet player from Glenn Miller teaching this young kid how to do that. And so much so that in my drum line in Ambridge, I was in the 7th grade in junior high. And this is back in the day when Ambridge had 3 junior highs that came together to be the high school.
It's a big school,
and the Ambridge junior high was one of 3, and Baden Economy was another, and Harmony was another. And I happened to be in the hallway, and they needed another snare drum for the brand new Rogers Dynasonic drums they just bought, right? And Gurney recommends me to Talfa, the band director, and said, this cat can read.
Nice.
He can read and he can play his rudiments.
Yeah.
So here I'm in. I'll never forget. He comes out the hallway. I'm supposed to go to lunch. He grabs me. He says, you're going to play snare in the high school band. And I went, what? And he just pulled me in. And I remember all these cats looking at me. Here's this 7th grader, with all these older guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The youngest being, 10th grade. Because junior high in our era was 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Sure. Right.
And so here's these 10th through 12th grade, and they're like, who's this kid? And I guess I held my own. Yeah. And one of them put me under his wing. His name was Arnie Steinberg, great guy.
Oh.
And he was my mentor.
Right.
And I went from being a drummer to being a percussionist.
Right. Okay.
He loved timpani. He loved all of that. And so timpani became my other main gig, as far as an instrument that I just love to play.
Wow.
And so people that get it understand that I'm a percussionist, and I learned percussion the hard way. And so when my daughter wanted to play drums, I told her I learned the hard way, and is you're going to go play piano first,
Right.
so that you can be a percussionist
Right.
the right way, versus me the backwards way. 11th grade, I'm teaching myself to play piano.
Right.
I can, learn percussion.
Yeah.
And so never really had the level of skill to go and make that my major, but I just loved it. So
Wow.
that's how I progressed up through all of that. And I teach bucket drumming, and I loved telling the kids that I was 12 years old when I had my first professional gig.
Wow.
And I said,
that's big.
Yeah, and I said, I've been playing for 58 years, so how old am I? And they all look at me like, Mr. Y, you're 70? And I'm like, yeah, I'm 70 years young. And, and I'm still playing and coming out. And I can see that band. I can see the polka band, and we made $20 a guy.
Yeah, wow.
At a gig 58 years ago. So here's 1965. My dad driving me to my gigs with my made in Japan red sparkle kit, and he's waiting after the gig, and I hand him the $20. And the other point I tried to make to them was $20 in that day for my dad as a carpenter, and he was a master craftsman building cabinets. That was a day's wages for him.
Oh, you bet. Yeah.
Right. And so here's his kid coming home with a $20 bill, and that's what he made in the day.
Right.
You earn $2.50 an hour.
Right.
Here I'm earning $5 an hour, and I did the cost of living index. You'll love this one. So I did it for the kids. I made them figure it out. It says, so how much is $20 worth today? And I tried to set some examples. I said $5 was a loaf of bread. How much is a loaf of bread today? And I said, so it's very interesting. A loaf of bread's $1.50 to $3. I said, it's X. I said, absolutely stunning them to say that $20 today in cost of living over 58 years is $962.50. And I said, I can tell you, I definitely don't get that for a gig.
Right.
I says, maybe some of my friends do.
Yeah.
They're playing professionally, but I says, I don't even think the guys in the Big River City Brass and all that, and maybe the symphony does, but that's, and so I try to help context with the kids, and then that gets their attention. But I would say bucket drumming has been a love of mine. I've done it for the last 20 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And you won't believe what you can get first and second and third graders to do when you teach them 3 notes: boom, click, and splash. The middle of the bucket, the edge of the bucket, and the sides of the bucket.
Wow.
And then I tell them Mr. John Gurney's technique. I said, if you can't say it, you can't play it.
Right.
He would make me say every line.
Wow.
Until I played it.
Yeah.
Never was I allowed to play a measure that I didn't say and read out loud to him.
Yeah.
And, and I went through that with the kids. There just happened to be some stuff on the board. And I said, that was really 1, 2, and 3, and a 4.
Yeah.
And the kids were like, what? I said, no, that's a drum talk.
Yeah.
So I would, do the same thing with buckets. I'd say boom, boom, click, click, boom, splash. And I would give them a 4-count measure because they would get it and repeat it.
Yeah.
And they had to say it before they could play it.
Yeah.
And so it just reinforced. And I said, it's telling you, the dopamine that's in your brain is telling the rest of your body to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I said, and that's how I played a lot of my drum solos. I actually would cue up what I was going to do, measures ahead, and what's patterns I love to play. And I know I would lay them in. They would be differently, but I would tell myself ahead what types of licks and cymbal things I would want to do.
Right.
And so a solo comes because you're telling yourself what to play.
Right.
And so hopefully that didn't take this too far off. But that's a great lesson. Tolfa's most amazing thing to me consistently. So the drum section was less is more.
Less is more. Yeah.
Less is more. Less is more.
Yeah.
And so what I would do with the last thing on the bucket drumming is I would teach them the last phrase. Space is taste. I said, nothing is one of the best notes you will play.
Right.
Because when you play something after that nothing, It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so I would have them play the rhythms to We Will Rock You, and they don't know what's that. And even in first grade, I'd ask them all, what song is that? They were like, Rock You. They knew it. It didn't matter what grade it was.
Yeah.
It's chart from Queen, right?
Yeah.
And everybody knows it from boom, boom, chick, boom, boom,
Yeah.
chick. That's it.
That's it, man.
That's it. And then I would teach them the last phrase. I said, we're going to sing, we will rock you. And rock you is the boom twice and hands up in the air.
Yeah.
And so these kids would scream it, boom. I said, did you hear that space?
Yeah.
And they would go, yeah. I said, that's one of the best notes you can play.
Yeah, man.
Nothing. So, so I think they'll remember that later in life if any of them become a drummer.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And they'll remember this crazy guy, this 7-year-old guy, just, saying space is taste, less is more. And we actually played dynamics. Even with first grade, I would turn my hand and they'd go loud to soft.
Wow. Yeah.
And they learned dynamics.
Yeah, the nuances.
The band instructor, I thought the guy was going to cry when I was doing it with him,
Yeah.
And because I believed they could do it, they did it.
Yeah.
And I know when I've gone to some bucket drumming classes where I have them in as on point, when I don't believe they can do it, guess what? They can't. It's amazing. And so if you believe your students can do it, they'll blow you away.
Yeah. That's some heavy duty stuff right there, what you just explained, because you were saying that, I was reminded of when I used to watch, when I used to watch bands at the park where I grew up, and I would sit behind the drummer, study things like what you described. Why is he hitting that snare a little lighter right here? What's he watching his hand do, the cymbal, hitting the cymbal lightly or hammering on it? So stuff like that. Yeah, the kids will definitely are going to remember that. That's some heavy duty stuff right there you just described. That's cool.
Yeah, and when you and I see a real pro, for me, I had the Grooms come, Mark and Donna Groom from the Skyliners come.
Wow.
And they did a 2-person concert, and they crushed it because it was 4 people, right?
Yeah.
She sings like crazy, hasn't lost her voice. She plays the keyboard, she plays the chords, and plays the bass pedals. So she's doing leads, chords, bass pedal, and singing, right?
Wow.
I don't believe the songs. And then I'm watching Mark, and this will get you where I've talked before. And I knew he was taught by Mars Carrazzo, and that's another conversation. So I'm watching him play, and I can see Mars Carrazzo, right? And I'm like, oh my God. And then I had to go backstage, in the garage studio to see his approach and what he was doing on cymbals alone.
Yeah.
I'm watching him hit a cymbal so many different ways, angles. And then he finishes me out by doing a Sonny Pugar to me. What's he do? He does a long roll with his right foot and his right hand on the floor tom and the bass, and he does a long roll between the two of them, right?
Wow, yeah.
And then he finishes out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I went, there's only a few cats that would even attempt to do that. And I know who taught him to do that. And I know who perfected it as Sonny Pugar. And so what I've seen from this is another vignette I'll give you is you can see the teacher in the student. You can see it. You can see their discipline. You can see their act. And I was at Station Square. It's a nice club area in Pittsburgh. And there was beautiful jazz band playing.
Yeah.
And the guys took a break, and I went up and I looked at the guy, didn't know him from nothing. I said, you might have Sonny Pugar's hands, but you'll never have his feet. And the guy almost cried. He said, how did you know that Sonny taught me?
Wow.
I said, how did I not?
Yeah.
You're the 3rd generation Mars Carrazzo. Do you know that? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I find out that Sonny just passed from cancer.
Oh, yeah.
And this kid finished Sonny's book that he wrote.
Oh, really?
Sonny was writing at Duquesne University.
Oh,
this guy wrote that ending. He finished Sonny's book.
Wow.
And so that was inspiring for him, and inspiring for me too. But I laughed. I said, I'm sorry, you still don't have Sonny's feet.
Yeah. Like,
you know.
it's a incredible compliment. It's like the guy that you thought of that must have meant the world to him. So.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the other thing too, I wanted to mention how I always go back. I talk about when I want to see older musicians because I watch, even as a young kid, I wanted to watch the old cats because of the lineage. Now you were talking about your teacher was in Glenn Miller band and
yep,
teaching you those finesse things. And he of course learned that stuff from Miller. So
yeah,
you were
yeah, yeah,
taught in a series of you learned things from Glenn Miller,
yep, yep.
and those influences. And that's just, I always talk about that. Was I watch the older musicians, where did they learn that? One, for instance, is Tony Valentino, the Standells. We did some playing with him. I'm
Right.
watching his guitar work, and he used to call it the wang bar. It's a whammy bar now, but
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
everyone called it the wang bar. And I said, Tony, you have a really, man, I dig the way that no one else does that. And he went on to tell me where he learned from,
yeah,
so
yeah,
that kind of stuff that is passed down. So you're passing down to the kids playing the buckets. That lineage goes back to the 30s and 40s. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
What you're teaching these kids, and
yeah. It is, and there's two sides of it. I always then watched Eddie Colonna, even though I only had 4 lessons.
yeah,
And to me, the defining moment was watching Mars Scarazzo take a
yeah,
solo.
yeah,
All right, and he, of course, he played for Frank Sinatra in Vegas,
yeah,
and he backed up Don Rickles, and
yeah,
he was just the sweetest guy in the world. And we knew him as Mars
yeah,
mutually, and also he never taught me anything. Oh, but he did. See,
yeah.
he didn't ever give me a lesson, but he taught me about life.
You're right.
And I remember I was in a 10th grade, the 11th grade cat that was ahead of me was going to do the big band solo, and he got sick. And I
Mm,
tried to step in, and Tolfa did the right thing. He said, "You're not ready." And to hear you're not ready is pretty tough to hear, but I
sure.
wasn't ready.
Right.
And Mars came in because they needed a big solo.
Yeah.
And Gary Nanadovich was ready for it. And him and Sonny Pugar were best friends. And Gary was the kid that Art, the teacher in Pittsburgh, wouldn't let him have his drums.
Right. Right.
Right? I mean, so phenomenal player. And he's still playing professionally in Australia.
Wow.
And so,
Yeah.
and so, when you think through this, and I'm at the concert and I'm watching Mars and I'm waiting for this big drum solo, right? I can't wait. He only plays one part of his drum set.
Ah.
He only played the sock cymbal and sock cymbal stand.
Really?
That was it.
Yeah.
His entire solo was playing every part of that stand and those cymbals.
Yeah.
And then he ends the solo on the butterfly wings of the nut. And he's playing a long solo on the 2 pedals of the. I just stopped and went, okay, I was definitely not ready.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is, for me, the purest, less is more drum solo I ever saw in my life.
Wow. Yeah.
And so when I do certain stuff on the sock cymbal, up and down and through, and and it's from what Mars did that one day that I
Wow.
just watched.
Yeah.
And said, how many ways can you hit these socks?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess a sock cymbal reveals my lineage versus saying a hi-hat.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And so sock cymbal was of a different era.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so so to me, Mars Mars was the one, after everyone told me I couldn't start the museum, looked at me and said, just do it.
Yeah.
Don't listen to anyone. And he would always inspire you to do something that everyone else didn't stand behind you with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was that kind of guy.
I just remember, as an upcoming guy hanging out when Mars was in Monaco, hanging out in the shop, and I had stick control and I stuff like that, but I didn't have a kit, and Mars it was always encouraging. He talked philosophy, like he it was more than just drums. I don't know, like you're describing. There was a philosophy of, and I always liked how he'd always go, "Yeah, man," and he'd throw out the cat, he's jazzer, man, and I'm hearing all these jazz terms and stuff, and I'm like, and he and I used to, because I lived in the area, and I'd just sit down there for hours, and I'd listen to the guys. He'd had lessons, I think, right in the back, or he'd all these drummers coming in, man, and I'm learning just being there, And like you and I had discussed about the Mars's influences, even if you never took a lesson from the guy, you learned about drumming, and it was more than just the drums, man. It was the philosophy, it was just the attitude, all that stuff. And he really set me on course, going back to the importance of Mars in the community to musicians. Young and old, especially the young, because he's fostering them like how you do with your bucket drumming for the kids, Now, I wanted to go touch upon now your drum kits. Now, you have phenomenal drum kits here. Now, your first kit was that red kit. It was, what was it?
Made in Japan, Slingerland knockoff. I was too cool for it in 2 years. At ninth grade, I was too cool. Yeah. And my dad's a carpenter, right? He does Formica. Right. I'm like begging my dad, please, can I have any other color but red sparkle?
Right. Yeah.
And so he's, him and Han. And so what he does, he recovers my drums, not in drum wrap. He recovered my drums in Formica, kitchen counter. Wow. And what people don't realize happened from this, right? Until you study the physics behind a drum and all of that, is that the density of that Formica created a reflection property through that inexpensive wood and warmth and depth. It was insane. Wow. My 14-inch floor tom from that MIJ recovered in black Formica was lower than any 16 that I could find.
No kidding.
Yeah. Wow. And so the whole kit just sounded like a shotgun.
Yeah.
And the only one I could compare it to was similar to the pearl fiberglass that I have.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then the other that's similar is that Pearl. It was a Pearl GLX. I still have it. And that's what I put in the studio. And, to have a 9-ply maple shell finished black lacquer inside and outside had warmth and reflection.
Wow.
And so where it could go is just unbelievable. So my dad's Formica drum wrapped, made in Japan red sparkle kit was something that I still have, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And it's restacked, and I found a couple of Slingerland shells, and I was going to finish it all out that way and finish it as a true Slingerland, because in the end, I couldn't deal with that, mount that went left and right on the tom, the classic, wrap around, hold,
Yeah, right.
And I put a Slingerland mount on those things immediately. And of course, that was influenced from Mars. So I'll tell you the only kit that I didn't keep, the kit that got away. And it was the kit that I got from Slingerland Music Store. This back when this company called Camco.
Yeah.
Right? They're coming into existence, who DW is today. Yeah. Right? And so I buy my first real kit in 10th grade. So I can imagine my dad thinking, I just rewrapped these kits. You're using your gig money to buy a brand new kit. I'm going to kill you. Like, I rewrapped these kits.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'll keep it, Yeah, and I did. And so I had that kit, and I just love the sound from those drums. Just love them. Yeah. And so they were a classic Illinois Camco kit. Not the West Coast version, but the true first generation.
Wow.
And I went and found another kit. Mine was blue swirl. Yeah. And I have gig pictures where it shows me in that in 11th and 12th grade. And then I found the purple swirl. I go down to Mars and I sit with him. And I'm like, I want to put these two kits together.
Yeah.
One had a 12, the other one had a 13. One had a 14 floor, the other one had a 16 floor. Unfortunately, I had two 20-inch bass drums. I'm like, what the heck? Yeah. I mean, the 13, 16 should have had a 22.
Yeah.
Camco just didn't build that many 22 bass drums.
Wow.
I go to Mars. I'm like, Mars, what are we going to do here? I'll fix you up. He says, so he orders me a 22 from Slingerland to match the white maple. He looked, I took the wrap off. And by the way, the wrap on those things, you took the lugs off, the wrap just came off.
Right.
The glue was so bad
that
the wrap just came off. I didn't, because guys would scream at me. It's like, I kept all the wrap, man. And he looked at that and he says, I know exactly which one. And he called his buddies at Slingerland. They sent him that in the rims. And he says, and here's the best that matches it, the classic Slingerland swivel ball mount,
double mount.
And so, and I destroyed Camco originality. But I finally had a 12, a 13, a 14, and 16. And man, I was pretty happy.
Yeah.
And I had 2 snares, which you always should have, a backup snare and a backup bass drum head, just to make it through a gig. Because, restoring a snare takes too long. You just bring the other snare in.
Bring the other one out. Yeah.
Bring it out. And that was a wonderful kit. And I used that kit was considered a famous cat in the valley. So Rudy Zetz looked me up, and he's, you want to play drums, and so that's the band.
Yeah,
it's always Rudy Zetz and the
Rudy
Zetz and the whatever.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter what we were called, and the great part about that is that we used that kit. I used that kit. At the Suburban Lounge, the famous club that he had out on Route 51.
Route 51.
Yeah, and
what year was this, say, roughly?
Oh, this is definitely, I'm in college, so it's 74 through 6.
Yeah,
in the mid 70s. And what was so neat about it is we played opposite B.E. Taylor.
Yeah, wow, yeah.
And so B.E. would flip with us to the Serbian Club in Aliquippa. We'd be there, and there was another band that flipped with us. A band was called Herd, and I had a smart idea. I said, I'm going to leave my drums at the other place. You leave your drums here, and we're just going to do that. Right? I do that, and lo and behold, I can't play his drums.
Oh no!
He was a professional weightlifter.
Oh no!
What it took to push that bass drum pedal was more than I could even imagine.
Yeah.
Right? And so the whole night I'm pressing with all my might to just get one beat out of the bass drum. And I looked at everyone, and I says, I'm never doing that again. Your
shin gets you pull the muscle down there or whatever.
Yeah.
What was the scene like around that time? Because I remember, but I wasn't a participant. I just remember I was too young, obviously, to go to these places. What was the scene in that era in the Beaver County? You mentioned a couple clubs already and a couple of the bands.
Oh yeah. It was you made it in Western Pennsylvania if you played Maury's Speakeasy. That was one club that defined a lot of things, especially in the 70s.
Right.
Then when all of a sudden the malls were rather the strip malls, and so here you got Northern Lights getting taken out from the Beaver Valley Mall.
Yeah.
And you got all this space here from where these huge stores were at, and that's when another nightclub process occurred in every former shopping center, the Century or the 21,000 club. I forget the exact name, but and in the 80s, early 80s, when you played there, you made it, at least regionally. And so there would be a few of those speckled around. But for me, the club that definitely was there was the one in Aliquippa, and just down the street from all the music stores and all of that. And so the State, and that's where I saw a band that still to this day is just some of the crispest band licks. The tightness of a drummer. The band was called Law, L-A-W, and they were from Akron, Ohio, and they just and still to this day I know. And Steve Acker helped me when I put up their stuff in the museum.
Wow.
And he gave me a lot of things from law. And you love how the guys in the valleys help each other. So here's a story, because you see this gig and you see B. Taylor, the lead singer for them, and they're in Australia, right? And I'm like, what happened? Well, they lost their lead singer to the James Gang.
Wow. Yeah.
I forget the names of everyone. So
sure. Yeah.
For that. So they lose to that. BE felt so bad. He's like, how can I help you guys? Right. And so the establishment was still around, and he went and he says, okay, I'll give you 6 months and for you to go, and I'm not going to be with you, but I'm going to help you honor all your gigs, because he could do all the vocals that other guy did.
Right.
And so, and Steve made sure he gave me a picture of B.E. Taylor fronting law in Australia.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
It was just, so but that's the way guys in the Valley were. So as you think through this, another guy, had a B3 Hammond, and I always found the drummers had the privilege of helping the organ guy with the whirly cabinet.
Yeah,
in exchange for helping. So no one else in the band lugged anything, but the drummer and the B3 guy lugged each other's equipment.
Yeah.
So we had empathy for each other.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's heavy stuff.
So, all right, you help me with mine, I'll help you with yours, and the rest of the cats are just walking in with their pedals and stuff.
Oh yeah. Where was the drum shop in Aliquippa done? He said is it Kelowna? Was
Eddie Kelowna was one store, and then Slinglands decided he needed that venue as well, and he came from up the other valley in Bellevue, and he dropped the store 3 spots away from that. And so if you were anywhere near where the now present police borough complex is at, that's exactly where Kelowna's. They were across from Michael's men's store.
Right. Okay.
In Aliquippa.
And then, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And was Silvers was in Aliquippa for a while too? Were they or weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because Silvers is who I bought the Camco kit from.
Right. Yeah, I remember you mentioning that. Yeah, Silvers. Yeah, because they're the store in Monaca, and everyone there. Like, I took piano lessons for a while. You mentioned how your drummers with pianos. Maybe that was what helped me. I was a piano player first. I didn't do well. My mom wanted me to play, but I just couldn't figure it out. It was too much. So I needed 2 hands and 2 feet. I could figure that out. Besides the gear, humping the gear around, were you bringing the PAs around too? Every band rolled with their PA, or guys?
Oh yeah. I mean, you would be religious about it. Rudy was religious about the Shoremaster. Standard, 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
Columns of speakers and that, and then if you were leaning more of the BE establishment or law side, you definitely had these PV monsters, horns, and first time I ever saw custom cabinets, and all of that amazing covering that they would do. It looked like the inside of a car, and it was just all this tucked plastic.
Tuck and roll, yeah.
Tuck and roll, what is this stuff?
Yeah. And now, and now further on with all the kits, you have some phenomenal kits that I see that you post pictures of. You have. I was trying to look to see the name of it. It looks like it's a dark maroon or so. It's about a 9-piece. What kit is that one you have? You've been playing that recently.
Yeah. Well, I got to the point that I was tired of the weight of my drums.
Yeah.
Okay. And so
I
tried to think about what I could do. And for me, the hardware was the most important part, and the mounting hardware.
Yeah.
And so I've graduated from Rogers to Pearl, to looking at Mapex.
Yeah.
And just, some really good, but the Yamaha stuff, just solid, rock solid. You could set it in place and all of that. And so I found that they had this brand of Yamaha called Rydeen, Rydeen. and I found them. And on eBay, I just kept collecting those shells.
Yeah.
And I kept collecting them until I had the same color. And actually, that set is a dark purple. It looks black, but it's dark purple if you would light it up.
Wow, yeah.
And that's my Frankenstein configuration.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, and so I call it that for two reasons. It's huge, but if I play the song Frankenstein from Edgar Winter,
yeah,
I want to have the three notes and the three notes in call and response.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I need 6 drums. I need 4 toms and 2 floors.
Right.
So if I'm to play that solo correctly and really have the tonality that's there, I need those 6.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't play it, when we had our horn band, I'm like, oh, I'm not playing the chart if I have the smaller kit. I'm just not doing it.
Right.
Because you lose, what it's all about. So I call that my Frankenstein configuration. And I actually am building a Rogers replica in that same configuration.
Wow.
So I couldn't find a 14 drum. I had Precision's drum build me a Black Diamond Pearl 14. Build me a Black Diamond Pearl 10 by 14 and build me a 10-inch tom that didn't exist in the 60s. And so what I did with that is I left all the interiors natural because every Rogers interior is gray or speckled gray.
Right, right.
And what I'm saying is I'm creating authenticity about the drum, but I'm not declaring it's authentic.
Right.
It's authentic in every way. And even when I went to Precision, they said, what era? I'm like, Rogers era. He says, well, the X-ply today of a shell actually equaled the X-ply there. He was such a historian. I said, we'll do it right. And in the end, the cat from Precision didn't charge me any more for giving me more pine.
Wow.
He just was so emphatic about making sure I had the right tonality in this replication.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm now. And we talked about us hooking on COVID. That's when all of this museum stuff happened. And that's when I started collecting every beaver tail lug I could find in North America. And I started restoring Rogers drums, whether they were one style or another from the 60s and 70s era.
Yeah.
So it was a Cleveland shell, a Dayton shell, a Fullerton shell, 9 by 72. I mean, so, and what I've realized here is the humble nature of it is I know I'm not an expert because when I really talk to the 3 guys that are experts on just Rogers alone, I realize how much I don't know.
Right, sure, yeah.
Right? But what I did there during COVID, I collected every beaver tail and I called the guys up to one time and I said, I have this beaver tail and the edge is not round. The edge is square. And they're like, yeah. I said, is there a first generation that people don't talk about? They're like, yeah.
Wow.
And I went, oh. And so there's a whole story behind that. But I collected, I have every generation of beaver tail that Rogers made before they went out of business.
Wow. Yeah.
And I actually found and bought the prototype lug that they had before they machined it. And so I have the lug that they had that they prototyped drums with.
Wow.
Rogers before they decided exactly how they were going to shape that lug.
Wow.
And so, and then I thought I was such an expert. And then I talked to a Jeff Burke or a Poe Shy, Anthony Amadeo, and I find out I don't know squat. I mean, these guys, I just can't even imagine how much knowledge they have.
Yeah, there's some of those Rogers websites, Facebook pages. I tune in and I see these guys. Some of them worked at the factories, and
oh yes,
and I'm going, oh my goodness, these guys they were fabricating all this stuff, and it's just those may be the gentlemen you were mentioning.
Oh this is so whether it's Jerry Shields or all the guys from Covington.
Yeah.
And so if you're a Rogers cat and you hear the word Covington, you'll know that describes a certain era.
Yeah.
A certain essence.
Yeah.
All the way down to the guy that tuned the Dynasonics before they left.
Right. Yeah.
And so the guys were just amazing. And that's when CBS killed them.
Right.
And so CBS buys Rogers and Fender, and they think they're a music company because they were in broadcasting.
Right.
And
Yeah.
thank God Fender got out before they killed them.
Yeah.
And then Rogers, they told me at one point in the 80s that Rogers was getting returned as many drums as they were shipping.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And so the end was there.
The end was coming. Yeah. Wow.
It was just the quality went nowhere. And I have the purest example of Yamaha buying the brand just so they could have all the access to the patents and own them, right?
Yeah.
And so they could officially kill the brand. And so the last Rogers made in the 90s from the May company in Texas, I bought just so I could have them, and I took them apart. You could barely get the heads on because the lug alignment and everything is so screwed up. It's like some guy with blinders on was like drilling holes wherever he felt like it.
Yeah.
And so it was just, and so I had that last set of 90s just to prove how bad it got.
Yeah, I remember them being, the quality was horrific. Yeah.
Yeah, and the best thing going was that Yamaha didn't care anymore about the Rogers thing, especially when this whole disruption in their process occurred with the guys that really were making Yamahas, and they decided to split from them.
Right.
And so that's a whole nother set of history. But they finally gave up on Rogers, and the guys in the States bought Rogers back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so unbelievable to see the recreation of Rogers.
Yeah, beautiful, huh?
I love the fact that Yamaha was destroyed at home.
Yeah.
They lost their focus. Someone took it over and said, why do we have this Rogers thing? The guys knock on their door and they give up the Rogers name.
Right.
Back to guys in the States that want to rebirth Rogers as a company.
Right.
And what that's happened is that has increased the value of every Rogers used thing that you have.
Oh, sure.
And so how you have thousands of dollars of brand new kits pulling up the kits that were going for $500 to $1,500 to $20. I mean, it's just the drag has been amazing. And when I talk about things now, I talk about what's the cost per inch.
Right.
$37 an inch. I mean, people look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, that's the cost per inch.
Yeah. Why
is it that much? Well, look how much it's new now versus this is an authentic thing, and it should be approaching what new is. And so, it's like Bitcoin, but in a good way.
Right. Yeah.
And you found something there.
Well, I remember when they were rolling out the product line, they would slowly, first they had the shells, then they started working the hardware, and then they started, they figured out the mounting system and stuff like that. So they've really come a long way. It's just been a pleasure seeing that line come back, So.
Yeah, it is. And it has its own space.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of guys digging that line now because the older dudes were even younger, were afraid to take the older kits out to tour if they were touring. They didn't want to, so I think maybe Steve Jordan had a vintage kit he brought out, but now guys are bringing out the brand new Roger kits. That's very cool,
It is. It's great to watch.
So now tell me about you sold the building. And you're in discussion now with the guys at the mall, at the Beaver Valley Mall. Tell me a little about that.
Well, I read some articles about how malls have died over the country.
Yeah. And
there's one outside of Youngstown, one of the most famous malls ever, and it's sitting there in mothballs.
Yeah.
And so I knew they were thinking of something, and so I cold called them. I said, hey, I'm a guy that actually opened the Beaver Valley Mall. I says, what are you talking about? I'm like, I was the first employee at Standard Sportswear. All right. I hate to tell you, I opened this mall.
Yeah.
And I know what it was and what it is not anymore. And I said, you need people to come there as a destination. And I said, I can give you a destination. You can give me the right pricing structure. So in the end, the pricing structure is phenomenal.
Wow.
And for the same amount that I'm paying now, I get 50% more space.
Yeah.
Fix stuff, put stuff together, get ready to roll something else out.
Yeah.
And think about it. And the space is not only 50% more on the walls, it's, even more in the middle. And so we're still talking through it.
Yeah.
And we have to make that decision before this fall. So somewhere around the August, September timeframe, we'll make the final decision for moving that there. And it's an important part because all of a sudden now we'll be open every day.
Yeah.
And so I've got to think about security, RFID indicators on collections, horns going off as someone walks out of a piece.
Yeah.
Because can I have someone there 6 hours a day, 7 days a week? And so that's our challenge now, is we're trying to figure out, can we gather up X amount of people to cover that time window of 72 hours? And so therefore you just divide that in half and you're like, I need, 36 people minimum.
Right.
That will come and do 3 hours a week.
Yeah. Right.
Or just whatever the math ends up being. I'm sorry.
And that's it at Beaver Valley Mall?
The Beaver Valley Mall.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
And what they're also contemplating is leasing out their former education wing, that there used to be truck driving education, all that.
Yeah.
All music nonprofits.
Nice.
And so rehearsal rooms for the Beaver Bobcats, for the Monaca Coronets, whatever. All those cats can rehearse in this wing now.
Wow.
That's
phenomenal.
This guy's really rethinking it. And I said, you've got to do that.
Yeah.
And why shouldn't this be a destination for concerts?
Right.
You guys have the big parking lot.
Yeah.
You can do any concert you want. There's no problem with space. You got all the food you need. It's right here.
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing concerts?
Yeah.
He looked at me. He's like, I'm like, you got to rethink your whole model.
Got the space, baby. Let's go, man.
Yeah. Parking for thousands. What do you do with it?
Yeah. People looking for things to do. Music. It's awesome. It's like come up to see the museum and learn some music history and listen to these bands rehearsing in that space over there. Man, I'd be there. I tell you that much, man.
Oh, yeah.
All the younger musicians you're fostering the scene, because you got guys and gals who hear that horn and go, man, I want to do that. How do I do that?
Sure,
so
sure.
So
I'm hoping it goes in that direction. And the other is, quite honestly, downtown Ambridge has gotten really strong.
Yeah.
The brewery scene has been phenomenal. Alter Genius is on one end of the town.
Yeah.
Ramada is in the middle of town.
Yeah.
And other things are happening. And there is an opportunity, but it doesn't compare with the foot traffic of a mall.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I can get some guy from the breweries coming through.
Right.
Or coming down from the other one, but it doesn't compare with the foot traffic that's physically in a mall.
Right. Creating these events that fosters more curiosity of what's going on, and before you know it, you've changed the environment to a whole musical environment up there. Yeah. And
it should be a destination every Saturday at 2. Duos and trios just playing.
Playing.
Where they playing? They're playing right in front of the Performing Arts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right there in front of the Palm, and they're just blowing down into that. And if you want an intimate setting, I'm going to have a setup done in the back.
Yeah.
So all the stuff's there.
Yeah.
And they can just plug in and play.
Wow.
And so why not? I mean, so I've never been limited. And again, my inspiration for that has always been Mars.
Yeah.
He was like, man, you got to do this.
Yeah.
So you can hear him saying it, man, you got to do this.
I can hear him, man. Well, what I want to do is I'll put a list. I'll list on the video the Facebook link or any other links you have. Send me, and I'll post up there. And want to get the word out. And then as this thing starts to come closer to fruition, anything I can do to help, I'm there to get the word out for you.
Great.
And
it's an interesting transition. I'd hate to say that we would close everything down.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the case. But the new generation has to come along.
Yeah.
I'm a 24/7 caregiver, and I need the next guys to be inspired to build the collection. So our vision was from Mancini to B.E. Taylor.
Yeah.
And that's what this place has.
It's phenomenal. I enjoy seeing all my friends out here that are doo-wop guys. I send them over to see the doo-wop section on your website. And just all that's everything.
And then I have to give tribute to my partner here. I can't leave him out. That's Gene Rees.
Gene Rees,
Gene Rees was the creator and designer of Nick's Fat City.
Wow, yeah.
All right, and so he created that venue in the South Side that was where the boss would play. Just and Gershecki always played there. I mean, all these guys played there.
Yeah.
And when they folded up, the owner calls Gene and says, "You want any of this stuff?"
Yeah.
And so this is how it happened. Here's COVID time.
Yeah.
I'm flying home to play the February Valentine's gig with my band called the Hot Metal Horns.
Yeah.
Because I made a commitment, but I'm down here. So I made no money. It was minus a few hundred,
Yeah.
And I fly home, I do that, and I sit with Gene, and I tell him I don't know what to do. He said, I got this entire collection, and I even collected more in Florida,
Yeah.
And I said, when I bring this rest of the stuff home in my car, my wife's going to kill me. I said, I either got to get rid of it or do something.
Yeah.
And that's when he says, I have everything from Nick's Fat City.
Oh, wow.
I went, everything? He says, well, the things that Jack didn't want, the famous Johnny Angel.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And he says, whatever Jack didn't want, I had.
Oh, wow.
And so, when you think about 18 guitars, I mean, just the instruments that are there, the gold records that are there, the outfits from the Marcells and the Pogues, the original jacket from Jimmy Beaumont.
Yeah.
I mean, just on and on.
Yeah.
You go through it, and it's just blows you away.
Wow.
And even in the 90s, I had a guitar signed, and now I'm going to lose my mind and not think about the band, Rusted Root.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So Rusted Root, and this girl calls me up out of nowhere. She goes, I've got a Rusted Root guitar signed by everybody. Do you want it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
So that's what's happened.
Yeah.
And so Gene said this has been in a locker for years, gathering dust. And so he wanted to bring it out. I said, I think we could do it.
Wow.
And that was the vision.
You're doing phenomenal work, and just all around, from the museum to teaching kids. It's I just can't say enough about the good work you're doing and fostering music to the young people. I'm honored to know you, and I think it's very important what you're doing, and I can't say enough about that.
Thank you so much, Nick. I really appreciate it.
I want to thank you for hanging out with me and telling me more about you. And I'm going to post all those links and anything new that comes when you do get everything rolling over there. Please let me know. I'll know because I'll be following you on Facebook.
Yeah.
So,
that's great.
But thank you so much. I want to talk. We'll talk more. I want to do this again if you don't mind.
I do. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Elbie, and I appreciate your time, and then God bless you and everyone back home.
All right. Thanks so much, Nick.
Okay. Thank you very much.
We'll see you.
Okay. Bye-bye.